What does it cost to do the right thing? For Ethan Carter, a widowed architect balancing deadlines and school runs, the answer was supposed to be simple. You see a child in trouble, you step in. No questions asked. But on a crisp autumn afternoon, one simple act of kindness, defending a quiet little girl from a bully, ignited a firestorm. He was prepared to face an angry parent, a scolding from the principal, maybe even a lawsuit. What he wasn't prepared for was the truth, that the little girl he saved was the daughter of his own boss, the formidable and enigmatic CEO, Isabella Sterling. And his decision that day wouldn't just risk his job, it would risk everything he'd built for his own daughter. The Tuesday afternoon sun cast long, golden fingers across the manicured lawns of Oak Ridge Community Park. For Ethan Carter, these fleeting hours after school were sacred. It was a time to decompress, to shed the skin of Ethan Carter, senior architect at Sterling Designs, and become simply dad to his 10-year-old daughter, Lily. Lily, with her father's thoughtful eyes and her late mother's artistic hands, was the sun around which his world orbited. Today she was trying to master a new kick, her brow furrowed in concentration as she lined up a shot against the worn metal frame of the soccer goal. Ethan sat on a nearby bench, a half-finished schematic for the Phoenix Tower project resting on his lap, but his attention was solely on her. The sound of her laughter as the ball finally sailed into the net was the only validation he needed in the world. The crack of the soccer ball against the post was the last happy sound Ethan heard. It was replaced by a different noise, a taunting, cruel chant that cut through the park's peaceful ambiance like a shard of glass. "Cry baby Sterling, cry baby Sterling, gonna run home to your empty mansion?" Ethan's head snapped up. Near the large oak tree at the edge of the playground, he saw a scene that made his stomach clench. A boy, bigger and louder than the rest, had cornered a small, slender girl. He recognized the boy, Mason Vance. His parents were notoriously wealthy, and Mason moved through the fifth-grade social hierarchy with the unearned swagger of a tiny king. The girl, however, was unfamiliar. She had dark, glossy hair pulled back in a simple ponytail and was clutching a sketchbook to her chest as if it were a shield. She wasn't crying, but her face was pale, her chin trembling with the effort of holding back tears. Mason snatched the sketchbook from her grasp. "What's this? More of your weird little drawings?" he sneered, holding it aloft. His two cronies laughed on cue. "Give it back, Mason," the girl said, her voice barely a whisper. "What's the magic word?" Mason taunted, dangling the book just out of her reach. "Oh, wait, I know. Please, Mason, you're so much better than me. Please give me back my stupid book." Ethan felt a hot surge of anger. He looked around. Other parents were scattered throughout the park, some engrossed in their phones, others chatting, all seemingly oblivious or unwilling to intervene. He remembered the countless conversations with Lily about standing up for what's right, even when it's scary. How could he preach that lesson and not live it himself? He folded his schematics, placed them in his briefcase, and stood up. "Lily, stay here, sweetie," he said, his voice calm but firm. He walked over, his stride measured and purposeful. He didn't run, he didn't shout, he just arrived. His shadow fell over the group, and the boys' laughter died in their throats. Mason turned, a defiant scowl on his face that faltered slightly when he saw the towering adult standing before him. "That's enough, son," Ethan said, his voice low and even. He didn't address him as Mason. He kept it impersonal, authoritative. "Give the girl her book back." Mason's bravado returned, bolstered by his audience. "And who are you? Her daddy?" he sneered. "I'm the adult who's telling you that your fun is over," Ethan replied, not rising to the bait. He held out his hand. "The book. Now." There was a tense silence. Mason looked from Ethan's unyielding face to his friends, who were now shuffling their feet nervously. The power dynamic had shifted completely. With a final petulant huff, Mason shoved the sketchbook into Ethan's hand. "Whatever. It was a dumb book anyway," he muttered, before turning to the girl. "This isn't over, Sterling." With that, he and his friends stalked off toward the other side of the park. Ethan knelt, bringing himself down to the little girl's eye level. Her big brown eyes were wide and glistening with unshed tears. He held out the sketchbook. "Here you go. I don't think your drawings are dumb. I bet they're wonderful. She took the book, her small fingers brushing his. Thank you, sir, she whispered, her voice fragile. You're very welcome, Ethan said with a gentle smile. My name is Ethan. That's my daughter Lily over there. He nodded towards Lily, who gave a small, shy wave. The girl offered a hesitant smile in return. I'm Sophia. It's nice to meet you, Sophia. Are you all right? Is there someone I can call for you? She shook her head, clutching the book tighter. My nanny is coming soon. She's just running late. There was a story in that hesitation, a note of loneliness that Ethan, as a single parent, recognized all too well. He knew what it was like to rely on schedules and caregivers, the guilt that came with every late meeting. Well, Ethan said, standing up, we'll be right over there if you need anything at all, okay? Sophia nodded, a silent look of gratitude in her eyes that was more powerful than any words. As Ethan walked back to his daughter, Lily ran to meet him, her face a mixture of awe and concern. You were like a superhero, Daddy, she whispered, slipping her hand into his. Ethan squeezed her hand, a lump forming in his throat. Sometimes, sweetie, just being a good person is all the superhero you need to be. He glanced back at Sophia, who had found a secluded bench and was now staring down at the cover of her sketchbook, her shoulders slumped. He felt a pang of sympathy for the quiet girl. He had no idea who she was, beyond her first name, and the fact that she was being tormented by Mason Vance. He couldn't possibly know that this small act of decency in a sun-drenched park had just set him on a collision course with the most powerful woman in his professional life. The next 2 days at Sterling Designs were a blur of activity. The Phoenix Tower was the firm's flagship project, a breathtaking skyscraper set to redefine the city's skyline. And Ethan's design was the heart of it. He was consumed by structural calculations, material sourcing, and endless meetings. The incident at the park, while not forgotten, was relegated to the back of his mind, a brief, righteous encounter in his dad life that felt worlds away from the high-stakes pressure of his career. On Thursday morning, as he was reviewing the latest HVAC proposals, an email popped up in his inbox. The sender was Eleanor Vance. The name sent a jolt through his system. The subject line was chillingly formal. Urgent, meeting regarding incident at Oak Ridge Park. The email was CC'd to a name that made his blood run cold. Principal Thompson of Northwood Preparatory Academy, the exclusive and expensive school that both Lily and, apparently, Mason Vance attended. Ethan had to stretch every penny to afford the tuition, believing it was the best investment he could make in Lily's future, a future that now felt precarious. The email was curt and accusatory. Mrs. Vance claimed her son had been aggressively confronted and verbally threatened by an unknown man. She had done some parental networking and discovered the man was Lily Carter's father. She demanded a meeting with the principal to discuss Ethan's unstable behavior and its potential impact on the school's safe environment. Ethan's hands tightened on his mouse. Unstable behavior? He had been calm, direct, and protective. This was a classic power play by a wealthy, entitled parent, twisting a narrative to protect their bully of a son. He felt the familiar fire of injustice, but it was quickly doused by a cold wave of fear. These people had influence. A complaint like this, however baseless, could tarnish his reputation and, worse, make things difficult for Lily at school. He spent the rest of the morning with a knot of anxiety in his stomach. Just before lunch, the official summons arrived from Principal Thompson's office. A meeting was scheduled for 4 p.m. the following day. Attendance was mandatory. The email also noted that the parents of the other child involved, Sophia Sterling, had been notified and requested to attend. Sterling. The name stared back at him from the screen. It was a common enough name, he told himself. A coincidence. It couldn't be. Not the Sterling. The world wasn't that small or that cruel. He tried to dismiss the thought, but it clung to him like a burr. He pictured the quiet, lonely girl in the park. Then he pictured the woman whose name was emblazoned in brushed steel letters in the lobby downstairs. Isabella Sterling. Isabella Sterling was a legend in the architectural world. After her husband Richard's sudden death 5 years ago, she had not only kept their prestigious firm from crumbling, she had elevated it to unprecedented heights. She was brilliant, ruthless in business, and intensely private. Ethan had only seen her a handful of times in his 2 years at the firm, a fleeting presence in the hallway, a commanding voice at an all-hands meeting. She was an untouchable, almost mythical figure who approved projects and dictated the course of his career from an office on the 50th floor that most employees called the Summit. The idea that the quiet girl in the park could be her daughter seemed preposterous. That evening, he tried to be the fun, present dad for Lily, but his mind was elsewhere. "Daddy, are you okay?" Lily asked over dinner, pushing her broccoli around her plate. "You look frowny." He forced a smile. "Just a lot on my mind from work, sweetie. Big project." "The Phoenix Tower?" "The very one," he said, ruffling her hair. He didn't want to worry her. This was his fight. He'd handled bullies before, both on the playground and in the boardroom. He would handle this. The next day, Friday, crawled by at a glacial pace. Every minute felt like an hour. He tried to focus on the cantilevered observation deck of the Phoenix Tower, but his mind kept drifting to the principal's office. At 3:30 p.m., he packed his briefcase, his heart pounding a nervous rhythm against his ribs. He walked out of the gleaming, glass and steel lobby of Sterling Designs, a building that represented his professional dreams, and drove towards a meeting that could potentially turn them into a nightmare. He still held on to a sliver of hope that Sterling was just a coincidence, a hope that was about to be spectacularly and terrifyingly shattered. The office of Principal Thompson was designed to be calming, with its soft blue walls, landscape paintings, and a ficus tree in the corner. Today, it felt like a pressurized chamber. Ethan arrived first, nodding politely to the school secretary. He sat on a stiff chair, the leather cool against his back, and waited. A few minutes later, the Vances arrived. Marcus and Eleanor Vance were exactly as Ethan had imagined. He wore a tailored suit that probably cost more than Ethan's monthly mortgage payment, and she was adorned in jewelry that caught the fluorescent light, making her sparkle with an abrasive glamour. They didn't acknowledge Ethan, instead greeting Principal Thompson with the breezy familiarity of major school donors. "David, thanks for seeing us on such short notice," Marcus Vance said, shaking the principal's hand with a little too much force. Principal Thompson, a man whose perpetual expression was one of harried diplomacy, gestured for them to sit. "Of course, Marcus. We need to get to the bottom of this." They sat opposite Ethan, creating a clear line of battle. The air crackled with hostility. "So," Marcus began, turning his cold eyes on Ethan, "you're the man who thought it was appropriate to scream at my son and his friends." Ethan kept his composure. "That's not what happened, Mr. Vance. Your son was bullying a little girl, and I stepped in to stop it. My voice was never raised." Eleanor Vance scoffed, a sound like tearing silk. "Mason is a leader. He's spirited. This man," she said, waving a dismissive, diamond-clad hand at Ethan, "cornered them. Mason said he felt threatened. Isn't that right, Marcus?" "Absolutely. We won't have our son intimidated by an unstable stranger at a park. For all we know, this man could be a danger." "I want to know what kind of background checks this school does on its parents," Marcus said, his words a direct threat aimed at both Ethan and the principal. Principal Thompson cleared his throat, looking deeply uncomfortable. "Mr. Carter, while I appreciate a parent looking out for another student, the school's policy is to avoid direct confrontations. You should have called a teacher or security." "We were in a public park, Principal Thompson," Ethan countered, his voice steady. "There were no teachers. A little girl was being verbally assaulted and had her property stolen. I did what any decent human being would do." "Decency doesn't involve traumatizing other children," Eleanor snapped. The debate raged on, a frustrating circle of accusations and denials. Ethan felt like he was pushing against a brick wall. The Vances were not interested in the truth. They were interested in asserting their dominance. He could see Principal Thompson beginning to wilt under the pressure. The Vances were likely the head of the PTA, the chairs of the fundraising committee, the kind of parents who could make a principal's life very easy or very difficult. The principal was about to suggest some sort of mandatory anger management course for Ethan, a humiliating and infuriating proposition, when the door to the office opened. The school secretary peeked her head in. Principal Thompson, I'm so sorry to interrupt. Mrs. Sterling is here. Ethan's heart stopped. Every ounce of air seemed to vanish from the room. The Vances exchanged a confused glance. Sterling? Marcus muttered. Who's that? And then she walked in. It was her, Isabella Sterling. She was not the commanding figure from the all-hands meeting. She was dressed in a simple but exquisitely tailored charcoal gray dress, her dark hair pulled back in a severe, elegant bun. But the formidable aura was still there, an invisible field of power that seemed to suck the very light and sound towards her. Her face was a mask of cold, controlled composure, but her eyes, when they scanned the room, held a deep, simmering anxiety. Behind her, holding her hand, was Sophia. The moment Sophia saw Ethan, her eyes widened, and a flicker of recognition and relief passed over her face. Ethan felt his world tilt on its axis. The quiet girl, the CEO, the same last name. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a catastrophe. He worked for this woman. His entire career, the stability he fought so hard to provide for Lily, was in the hands of the mother of the girl he had unknowingly involved in this mess. Isabella Sterling's gaze swept over the Vances, lingered on Principal Thompson, and then settled on Ethan. There was no recognition in her eyes. To her, he was just another face. A stranger in a room where her daughter was clearly the subject of some distress. Principal Thompson stood up, flustered. Mrs. Sterling, thank you for coming. We were just discussing an incident that involved your daughter, Sophia. Isabella's focus sharpened. She looked down at Sophia, then back at the principal. I was told there was a bullying incident. My nanny informed me this morning. I had to reschedule 3 board meetings to be here. Please enlighten me. Her voice was like ice. Marcus Vance, sensing a potential ally in a fellow person of influence, seized the opportunity. Mrs. Sterling, a pleasure. Marcus Vance, he said, extending a hand she did not take. It seems this man, he gestured at Ethan again, had a very aggressive altercation with my son, Mason. Apparently your daughter was nearby. Isabella's eyes narrowed slightly. She turned to her daughter who was hiding behind her. She knelt, her movements fluid and precise. Sophia, darling, she said, her voice softening just for her. Can you tell me what happened? The truth. Sophia hesitated, her eyes darting towards the Vances, then to Ethan. She took a shaky breath. Mason took my sketchbook. He was calling me names. He wouldn't give it back. Her small voice was clear in the silent room. She then looked directly at Ethan. And he made him give it back to me. He was nice. The simple, unvarnished truth of a child. It hung in the air, a stark contrast to the Vances' manufactured outrage. Isabella Sterling slowly stood up, her cool gaze falling on Mason's parents. The mask was back in place, but this time it had a dangerous edge. She then looked at Ethan, truly seeing him for the first time. A flicker of confusion crossed her face. He looked familiar, but she couldn't place him. So you are Mr. and Mrs. Vance, she said, her voice dangerously quiet. And your son Mason was tormenting my daughter. And this gentleman, she said, her eyes now locked on Ethan, intervened on her behalf. Now see here, Marcus blustered. My son said, I care very little for what your son said, Isabella cut in, her voice slicing through his. I care about what he did, and what this man did. She turned her full attention to Ethan. The weight of her stare was immense. He felt like an insect under a microscope. This was it. The moment his life as he knew it could end. He was an employee who had embroiled his CEO's daughter in a messy school dispute. He was finished. And you are? She asked, her tone unreadable. He swallowed, his throat suddenly dry. He stood to address her, out of pure instinct. Ethan Carter, ma'am. My daughter is Lily Carter. She's also in the 5th grade. He watched her process the name, Carter, a common name. It meant nothing to her. He was safe for a few more seconds. But he knew what was coming. The principal, fumbling with his papers, would be the one to seal his fate. Yes, and Mr. Carter is, Principal Thompson began, looking at his file. An architect at... Oh. The principal froze, his eyes widening as he read the employer information on Ethan's file. He looked from the paper to Ethan, and then to the terrifyingly composed woman standing before him. Isabella Sterling's perfectly sculpted eyebrow arched a fraction of an inch. "Is there a problem, Principal Thompson?" The principal swallowed hard. "No, no problem, Mrs. Sterling. It's just, according to our records, Mr. Carter is an architect at Sterling Designs." The silence that followed was absolute. Ethan watched as the final piece of the puzzle clicked into place in Isabella Sterling's brilliant mind. Her eyes widened almost imperceptibly. The anonymous intervening parent was no longer anonymous. He was her employee, the man responsible for the single most important project in her company's portfolio. And he was sitting in the principal's office, accused of threatening the son of a powerful family, all because he had defended her daughter. Her expression was utterly, terrifyingly unreadable. Ethan Carter held his breath, waiting for the axe to fall. The atmosphere in the principal's office shifted from tense to volatile. Marcus Vance, seeing what he perceived as a monumental advantage, smirked. "Well, well," he said, leaning back in his chair with theatrical ease. "This is a fascinating development. So you work for Mrs. Sterling, do you? I imagine she doesn't approve of her employees getting into public altercations and causing problems for, let's say, friends of the firm." The implied threat was clear. Ethan's stomach plummeted. He was trapped. If he defied the Vances, they'd use their influence to hurt him professionally. If he backed down, he'd be betraying his own principles and letting a bully win. His eyes met Isabella Sterling's. He expected to see anger, frustration, or the cold dismissal of a CEO dealing with a messy HR problem. He saw none of those things. Instead, he saw a flicker of something else. It was the brief, unguarded look of a mother who had just heard her quiet child's voice tremble while recounting a moment of torment. The CEO vanished for a split second, replaced by a parent whose protective instincts had just been fully and violently engaged. Isabella Sterling turned her head slowly, fixing Marcus Vance with a gaze so cold it could have frozen molten steel. "Let me be perfectly clear, Mr. Vance," she said, her voice dropping to a low, dangerous register. "My daughter was bullied by your son. Mr. Carter, an employee of my company and a father at this school, acted when no one else would. He did not defend a stranger. He defended a child. My child. You have mistaken this situation for a business negotiation. It is not." She took a step forward, her presence dominating the small office. "You have spent the last 20 minutes trying to intimidate a man for an act of basic human decency. You have wasted my time, you have upset my daughter further, and you have grossly, and I mean grossly, underestimated me." She turned to Principal Thompson, who looked as though he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. "Principal Thompson, what is the school's official policy on bullying?" We have a zero-tolerance policy, Mrs. Sterling," he stammered. "Zero tolerance," she repeated, the words hanging in the air. "Then I expect it to be enforced. I want a full investigation into Mason Vance's behavior, not just towards Sophia, but towards any other child he may have targeted. I expect concrete consequences, and I expect a formal, written apology from both Mr. and Mrs. Vance to my daughter." "And to Mr. Carter," Eleanor Vance gasped. "Apologize? To him? Absolutely not. Do you know who we are?" Isabella's smile was a terrifying thing, devoid of all warmth. "I know exactly who you are. Your husband's company, Vance Construction, has submitted a bid to be the primary contractor for Phase 2 of the Phoenix Tower project. It was a competitive bid." She let the past tense of the verb linger. Marcus Vance's smug expression dissolved into pure panic. The Phoenix Tower was not just a project, it was the most lucrative and prestigious construction contract in the city for the next decade. Losing it would be a catastrophic blow. "Isabella, let's not be hasty," he said, his tone shifting from domineering to desperate. "It's a simple schoolyard squabble. The kids will work it out." "No," Isabella stated, her voice final. "The time for working it out is over. My daughter, a student who has been at this school for less than 2 months, was targeted and humiliated. Mr. Carter is not the one on trial here. Your son is. And by extension, so are you." She turned back to Ethan. Her expression was still severe, but the icy hostility was gone, replaced by a cool, professional respect. "Mr. Carter, thank you. You had a choice, and you chose to protect a child. That is the character I expect not only in my employees, but in the world. You will face no negative repercussions for this. On the contrary, she didn't elaborate. She didn't need to. The message was clear. He was under her protection. She then knelt once more in front of Sophia. "We're going home, sweetheart," she said softly. She stood, took her daughter's hand, and without another glance at the stunned Vances or the petrified principal, she turned to leave. At the door, she paused and looked over her shoulder at Ethan. "Mr. Carter," she said, her voice now back to its usual efficient tone. "My office. Monday morning, 8 a.m. sharp." It wasn't a question. It was a summons. Then she was gone. Ethan sat in the suddenly quiet office, his mind reeling. The Vances were pale and silent, their power play having backfired in the most spectacular way imaginable. Principal Thompson was hastily making notes, his allegiance having shifted with the velocity of a weather vane in a hurricane. Ethan had walked into the lion's den expecting to be devoured. Instead, the lioness had turned and defended him. He had won the battle, but the summons to her office felt ominous. He had survived the wrath of the Vances, but he had no idea what to expect from Isabella Sterling herself. The protective mother had saved him. On Monday, he would be facing the CEO. The weekend was a strange limbo. Ethan played with Lily at the park, helped her with her homework, and went through the motions of a normal life. But the 8 a.m. meeting loomed over him like a storm cloud. He replayed the scene in the principal's office endlessly. Isabella Sterling had defended him, yes, but she had done so with the clinical precision of a surgeon excising a tumor. It was a strategic maneuver, a display of power. It wasn't personal. Or was it? Monday morning arrived, gray and drizzling, matching his mood. He dressed in his best suit, the one he saved for major client presentations. As he rode the silent, high-speed elevator to the 50th floor, he felt a level of anxiety he hadn't experienced since his final thesis review in college. The elevator doors opened onto a space of hushed, minimalist elegance. White marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows with breathtaking views of the rain-swept city, and a single severe-looking assistant sitting at a large obsidian desk. "Mr. Carter," the assistant said, without him needing to introduce himself. "Mrs. Sterling will see you now." He was led through a set of imposing double doors into an office that was larger than his entire apartment. One wall was a solid pane of glass overlooking the city. Another was covered in architectural awards and framed photos of stunningly modern buildings, the legacy of Sterling designs. Isabella Sterling was not sitting behind her massive desk. She was standing by the window, holding a mug of coffee, looking down at the city she was so instrumental in shaping. "Mr. Carter, thank you for coming," she said, turning to face him. Her expression was neutral, giving nothing away. "Coffee? No, thank you, ma'am." "Please," she said, gesturing to a pair of sleek leather armchairs arranged around a low-glass table. "Sit." He did as he was told, feeling like a defendant taking the stand. She sat opposite him, crossing her legs with an unconscious elegance. "I'll get straight to the point," she began, her CEO persona firmly in place. "What happened on Friday was regrettable, but your actions were not. I wanted to thank you personally, away from that circus. You showed integrity and courage." Ethan was taken aback by her directness. "I just did what I hope anyone would do for my daughter." "Hope is often a poor substitute for action," she countered, a hint of weariness in her voice. "Most people look away. You didn't." She took a sip of her coffee. "I've reviewed Sophia's file and Mason Vance's. It seems Friday was not an isolated incident. My daughter has been struggling to adjust, and I have been distracted." For the first time, Ethan saw a crack in the impenetrable facade. It was a hairline fracture of guilt, of a parent realizing they had missed the signs. "She's a wonderful kid," Ethan offered gently. "Very talented. I saw her sketchbook. She has a real gift." A flicker of warmth entered Isabella's eyes. Her father was the artist. "Richard, I'm all numbers and angles." The mention of her late husband was unexpected, a brief and vulnerable admission. She quickly regained her composure. "Which brings me to the Vances. As of 7 a.m. this morning, Sterling Designs has officially rejected Vance Construction's bid for the Phoenix Tower project, citing a divergence in corporate values." Ethan was stunned. "But their bid? I saw the preliminary numbers." They were the lowest by a significant margin. This will cost the project millions. It will, she confirmed without flinching. And our shareholders will ask questions, which I am prepared to answer. Sterling Designs is built on a foundation of integrity. It's in our mission statement. A company that cannot uphold that principle in a school principal's office has no business building our flagship tower. We've already begun negotiations with the Kensington Group. The project will be fine. This was a level of principled leadership Ethan had only ever read about. She was willing to take a significant financial hit to stand by a moral conviction. His respect for her deepened immensely. However, she continued, her tone shifting back to business, this creates a complication. The Vances are not people who take a public slight quietly. They have friends on the City Planning Commission, in the media. They are going to look for leverage for any weakness in the project. And right now, the most visible person connected to this incident is you. Here it was. The other shoe was about to drop. They will try to discredit you, she stated calmly. They will dig into your life, your work. They will try to paint you as an unstable, aggressive man to justify their narrative and to create problems for me. I need to know if there is anything in your past, personal or professional, that they can use against us. The question was invasive, a stark reminder of their employer-employee relationship, but it was also practical. She was protecting her company, her project, and by extension, him. Ethan met her gaze directly. My wife, Sarah, passed away 3 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. I've been raising Lily on my own ever since. My professional record is clean. I work hard, I keep to myself, and I love my daughter. There's nothing for them to find. Isabella held his gaze for a long moment, searching for any hint of deception. She found none. She gave a slow, deliberate nod. Good. Then we will weather this together. She stood, signaling the end of the meeting. I'm promoting you to lead project director for the Phoenix Tower, effective immediately. It comes with a significant pay raise and oversight of the entire design and construction process. I need my best architect running point, someone I can trust implicitly. You've proven you are that person. Ethan was speechless. He had walked in here expecting a warning, at best. He was walking out with a promotion, a raise, and the trust of Isabella Sterling. I don't know what to say, Mrs. Sterling. Say you'll accept, she said simply, and from now on call me Isabella. As he stood to leave, she spoke one last time, her voice softer. Mr. Carter, Ethan, I saw Sophia's sketchbook last night, the one you saved. On the first page, she had drawn a new picture. It was a tall, strong oak tree shielding a small flower from a storm. Thank you for being her tree. Ethan walked out of the office and back into the rain-streaked morning, the world feeling entirely different than it had just 10 minutes before. He had gone to the park as a father and had stepped in as a decent man. Now he was an ally to one of the most powerful women in the city, the lead director of his dream project, and the protector of a little girl he barely knew. And he had a terrifying feeling that the storm Sophia had drawn was only just beginning to gather. The promotion was a whirlwind. Ethan was immediately plunged into the highest levels of the Phoenix Tower project. He was now in daily meetings with Isabella, department heads, and engineers from the Kensington Group. He saw a new side of his CEO, a brilliant, demanding, and fiercely intelligent leader who could dissect a complex structural analysis with the same ease she could negotiate a multi-million-dollar materials contract. The Vances, as Isabella had predicted, did not go quietly. A thinly veiled article appeared in a business journal questioning Sterling Designs' abrupt and costly change of contractors, hinting at internal instability. Whispers circulated at City Hall, but Isabella was a master strategist. She countered with a press release announcing a new partnership with a local youth arts program, funding it with the money saved from an efficiency review of project bids. She spun their rejection into a story of corporate responsibility, and the Vances' whispers were drowned out by a chorus of public praise. Through it all, an unexpected bond began to form between Ethan and Isabella. Their meetings often strayed from blueprints and budgets. They would talk about the challenges of their work, the pressures of leadership, and tentatively at first they began to talk about their children. Isabella learned about Lily's passion for astronomy and her uncanny ability to bake the perfect chocolate chip cookie. Ethan learned that Sophia was a gifted but painfully shy artist who missed her father terribly and often felt lost in the shadow of her formidable mother. Richard used to take her to the art museum every Sunday, Isabella confessed one evening as they were the last two left in the office, poring over a zoning variance. He would pack a picnic. I'm always in another city or in a board meeting. The nanny takes her to lessons. It's not the same. The admission was quiet, filled with a regret so profound it seemed to make the vast office feel small and close. It's not too late to start, Ethan said gently. An idea sparked. Lily has been asking to go to the planetarium. Maybe you and Sophia would like to come with us on Saturday. As a thank you for, well, everything. Isabella looked surprised, then hesitant. Her weekends were usually filled with work she brought home. I don't know. No spreadsheets, no contracts, Ethan pushed, a smile in his voice. Just stars and kids. They've become friends, you know. Lily told me they've been eating lunch together at school. She said Sophia showed her how to draw a horse that actually looks like a horse. That seemed to be the tipping point. The thought of her daughter making a friend of a small joy she might be missing was enough. Okay, Ethan, she said, a rare, genuine smile gracing her lips. We'll be there. That Saturday was a revelation. Away from the sterile environment of the office, Isabella Sterling seemed like a different person. She wore jeans and a simple sweater, and her hair was in a loose ponytail. She still carried an air of authority, but it was softened by a maternal watchfulness. She was awkward at first, unused to the casual rhythm of a family outing. But watching Lily and Sophia run ahead, their heads bent together in giggling conspiracy, she began to relax. Inside the planetarium, as the lights dimmed and the vast, star-dusted cosmos lit up the domed ceiling, Ethan watched her face. In the dark, illuminated only by the light of 1,000 faux suns, her expression was one of pure, unadulterated wonder. He saw not the CEO, but a woman rediscovering a piece of herself she thought was lost. Afterward, they got ice cream. The four of them sat at a small, sticky table, a chaotic and happy mess. Lily was explaining the concept of a black hole with dramatic hand gestures, while Sophia, emboldened by Lily's friendship, was shyly showing Isabella a drawing she had made of the Orion constellation. This is nice, Isabella said quietly to Ethan amidst the happy chatter. It is, he agreed, his heart feeling fuller than it had in a long time. He saw the way she looked at Sophia, with a fierce, desperate love that she often hid under layers of corporate armor. And he realized he was looking at her in a new way too. He saw the strength it took to be both a CEO and a mother, the quiet grief she still carried for her husband, the deep well of love she had for her daughter. The Ice Queen of Sterling Designs was a myth. The reality was infinitely more complex and captivating. As they were leaving, their hands brushed as they both reached for a napkin. A jolt, small but unmistakable, passed between them. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second too long. In that moment, the blueprint of their relationship, employer and employee, allies, co-parents, seemed to dissolve, leaving behind the undrawn, terrifying, and exhilarating possibility of something more. It was a possibility that both excited and terrified him. His life was simple, built around Lily. Her life was a global empire built around her work. They were worlds apart. But as he watched her help Sophia into her car, tucking a stray strand of hair behind her daughter's ear, he couldn't deny the truth. His simple blueprint had been irrevocably altered, and the new design was taking a shape he never could have imagined. The weeks that followed the city council approval bled into a vibrant autumn, each day weaving the threads of their two families closer together. The professional alliance between Ethan and Isabella was already legendary within the firm, a seamless blend of his visionary design and her incisive strategy. But it was the personal connection, forged in the crucible of the principal's office and tempered in the quiet moments that followed, that truly began to reshape their worlds. The bridge between their lives was built not in grand gestures, but in small, shared experiences. One crisp Saturday, Isabella and Sophia arrived at Ethan's modest, book-filled home for an afternoon of pumpkin carving. Isabella, dressed in a tailored wool coat and boots that cost more than Ethan's couch, looked beautifully out of place in his slightly chaotic, lived-in kitchen. She watched, a small, uncertain smile on her face, as Lily and Sophia, already fast friends, excitedly laid out newspapers on the floor. "I have to confess," Isabella admitted to Ethan in a low voice as he handed her a carving knife. "The last time I did this, a team of professional event planners did the actual carving. I just approved the final aesthetic." Ethan chuckled, a warm, genuine sound. "Rule number 1, there is no aesthetic. There's just mess. You'll be great." For the next hour, the Ice Queen of Sterling Designs was gone. In her place was a mother with pumpkin seeds stuck in her hair, laughing with an uninhibited joy that Ethan had never seen before. She groaned when the lopsided face she carved into her pumpkin collapsed on one side, and she listened with rapt attention as Lily explained the critical structural integrity of a jack-o'-lantern smile. Ethan watched the scene from the kitchen counter, nursing a mug of cider, and a profound warmth spread through his chest that had nothing to do with the drink. He saw Sophia hold up her perfectly carved cat face, her eyes shining with pride as her mother praised her work. He saw Lily comfortably lean against Isabella to ask for help with the tricky part. This wasn't just a play date, it felt like a rehearsal for a life he hadn't dared to dream of. However, bridging their worlds also highlighted the chasm between them. A week later, Isabella invited him to the prestigious Architectural Guild Awards gala. "I need an escort who can actually talk about architecture," she'd said, a playful light in her eyes. But as Ethan stood in the sea of tuxedos and designer gowns, a glass of champagne in his hand, he felt a familiar sense of being an outsider. He was a man who built buildings, surrounded by people who merely owned them. He overheard a snippet of conversation from a nearby group. A well-known developer, a man Ethan recognized from industry magazines, gestured discreetly towards him. "That's Carter," he murmured to his companion. "Sterling's new pet project. She torpedoed the Vance deal for him. Wonder what he has on her." The words, laced with insinuation, were a cold slap. He was no one's pet project. He was the man who had designed the Phoenix Tower. But in this world of power and perception, the truth was secondary to the narrative. Later, Isabella found him on a balcony overlooking the city lights. "You've been quiet," she observed, her voice soft. "Just taking it all in," he lied. She looked at him, her gaze perceptive. "Or you overheard Preston Vance's idiot cousin Jonathan running his mouth." She sighed. "Ethan, these people don't matter. They build nothing. They live in a world of whispers and rumors. We live in a world of steel, glass, and concrete, of things that are real." She moved closer, placing a hand on his arm. "What is real is that you are the most talented architect in this city, and you are the kindest man I have ever known. Don't let them make you doubt that." Her fierce loyalty was a shield. In that moment, looking into her eyes with the glittering city spread out below them, he knew that the whispers didn't matter. Her belief in him was the only foundation he needed. The final presentation for the city council was their ultimate test. It was a formality, but one that the Vance's allies could still try to turn into an ambush. The council chamber was packed. Ethan and Isabella stood side by side at the podium, a united front. As predicted, Marcus Vance was in the audience, his face a mask of bitter resentment. Ethan spoke first, passionately detailing the design philosophy, the community benefits, the sustainable innovations. Then Isabella laid out the flawless financial and logistical plan. During the Q&A, a councilman known to be friendly with the Vances asked a series of nitpicking questions. Finally, Marcus Vance himself was given leave to speak as a concerned citizen. "Mr. Carter," he began, his voice dripping with false concern, "your design for the subterranean support structure is ambitious. My own engineers noted a potential vulnerability in the load-bearing calculations for the Western Quadrant, something a more seasoned project lead might have overlooked. How can you assure this council that your relative inexperience won't turn the Phoenix Tower into a catastrophic failure?" A hush fell over the room. It was a direct, public attack on Ethan's competence. Ethan didn't flinch. He walked to the digital display and pulled up the specific schematic Vance had mentioned. "Thank you for the question, Mr. Vance," he said calmly. "You're referring to the integration of the helical piles with the bedrock. If you had looked at the geological survey from March, not the preliminary one from last year, you'd see that the bedrock in that quadrant has a compressive strength of over 4,000 psi, which is 50% above the requirement for the current load calculation. We didn't overlook it. We over-engineered it for safety. The design is not just sound, it's impenetrable. He had not just answered the question, he had exposed Vance's shoddy, outdated research. To seal the victory, Isabella stepped forward. "I'll only add," she said, her voice cool and clear, "that Mr. Carter's meticulous approach is a hallmark of Sterling Designs. Unlike Vance Construction, whose seasoned experience led to the 3-month delay and significant structural rework on the City Center Plaza project 3 years ago due to a similar oversight. It was a devastatingly precise counterpunch." Marcus Vance sat down, his face ashen. The project was approved unanimously. That night, back in the quiet of her 50th floor office, the adrenaline of their victory gave way to something else. They stood by the great window, the city lights a silent testament to their triumph. "We did it," Ethan said, a feeling of profound relief washing over him. "You were brilliant today, Ethan," Isabella said, turning to face him. "You didn't just defend the project, you defended your honor." "I learned from the best," he said, his gaze locked with hers. The space between them crackled with unspoken emotions. "Isabella, about the gala, about what you said." "I meant every word," she affirmed. "I spent 5 years building walls around myself, thinking it was the only way to protect my company, to protect Sophia. I thought strength was about being untouchable." She shook her head, a vulnerable motion that touched his soul. "You taught me that true strength is about letting the right people in. I haven't felt hopeful since Richard died, until you and Lily. You did the same for me," he confessed, his voice thick with emotion. "I thought my world had to be small to keep Lily safe. I was so afraid of risking what little we had." He took her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers. "But you're not a risk, Isabella. You feel like coming home." The last of her reserves finally gave way. She leaned into him, and he met her halfway. The kiss was not one of tentative discovery, but of profound recognition. It was a kiss that sealed their victory, honored their past, and promised a future hewn from shared courage and unexpected love. A month later, the company held its holiday gala at the base of the rising tower. The steel skeleton climbed into the night sky, adorned with glittering lights, a symbol of a new beginning. Ethan stood with Lily, who was pointing out constellations to a captivated Sophia. He saw Isabella walking towards them, a vision in a deep sapphire gown. She moved through the crowd, but her eyes were only for him. "Quite a view," she said softly as she reached his side, looking up at the magnificent structure. "The best," he agreed, but he wasn't looking at the tower. He was looking at her, at their daughters, at the perfect, impossible life they were building together. "Look, Sophia!" Lily suddenly exclaimed, her bright voice cutting through the party's murmur. "Our parents are holding hands." The two girls erupted into a fit of giggles, a sound of pure, uncomplicated joy. Isabella squeezed his hand, a radiant smile on her face. He smiled back, his heart full. He had stepped into a fight to protect a little girl in a park, armed only with a father's sense of right and wrong. He had never imagined it would lead him here. Together, the four of them stood in the heart of the celebration, a new and resilient family, looking up at the phoenix that had risen, not from ashes, but from a simple act of kindness. In the end, this wasn't just a story about a bully in a park. It was a story about the foundations we build in our lives. Ethan Carter thought he was just building a tower of steel, but he ended up rebuilding a family. Isabella Sterling thought she was leading a corporation, but she ended up rediscovering her own heart. It's a powerful reminder that the most significant choices we make are rarely the big strategic ones. They are the small, everyday decisions. To step in, to speak up, to be kind when no one is watching. What would you have done in Ethan's place? What do you think is the true measure of a person's strength? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. These are the stories that remind us of the good in the world, the connections that make us human. If this story touched your heart, please give this video a like and share it with someone who needs a reminder that courage and compassion can change everything. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories that inspire the soul. Thank you for listening.